Author's Corner, she asked about the books they wrote.
J. Thomas Bowne, JD, joins us. His book is Council Ford Insurrection, the Second Amendment, 2043-2063. And he joins us on Author's Corner here on America Tonight with me, Kate Delaney. He's got such an interesting background in the law, being a lawyer, and then with this political thriller, so much that's poured into it. So, Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Let's dive into what made you, because that's always fascinating to me, what made you decide you were going to write this novel?
Well, this is my second book, Kate. My first one was a nonfiction book, and I was somewhat criticized for it because it read like it was written by a lawyer. Well, I can understand that. I decided that another way of getting my message across was to write a fiction book where I could present to readers the information upon which they could draw their own views as to, the validity of my position.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it in this book it's so interesting, the characters, where you take us through a couple of different things at Council Ford, and you talk about the hills and the valleys and the things that you would think in this kind of a book. Like, it really truly is what did I say, political thriller. So tell us about some of the characters. Tell us about the sheriff, James Mulvaney, and what happens with him and how you came up with this story.
Jim Mulvaney is a 33-year-old decorated Marine veteran. His last assignment when he was on duty was extremely harrowing for him, and he and his unit barely got out alive, basically. His performance was so good that the military offered him a re-enlistment with a big bonus, but he just decided that he didn't want to put himself or his wife and family through that type of thing anymore. So he decided that he would seek a job in a quiet rural area like Council Ford. And he went there, but soon he found out very quickly, as I point out in the book, that danger is always right around the corner. But Jim Mulvaney is a good judge of men and a good judge of situations, and he handles everything splendidly. So he's a main character that carries through this book and the follow-on book that I'm writing on it, Jim Mulvaney. Another character is Flim Jackson. Flim is the wealthiest rancher in the Council Ford area, and he decides that he doesn't like the changes that are on the horizon for their community. And even though the city council has been taken over by so-called college boys, he organizes his neighbors and local citizens to oppose it. And over a 7-month period, we eventually get up to the final meeting of the city council at the courthouse, and violence ensues. Flim's movement is taken over by a national militia organization, which in turn is taken over by a rogue leader whose name is Chuck Hutchins, the Mystery Man. And eventually guns are drawn and triggers are pulled. And after that, we end up with 25 citizens dead. Very, very unfortunate.
Wow. And that's part of the hills and valleys I was trying to describe that you take us through. And because you're talking about things that are so current, you're talking about gun control laws, and you're talking about technology, like with the data center and pushback from some people, and then what it does as far as bringing the town into the future and but people defending their way of life, right?
That's exactly the storyline as I have intended to present it. One thing I might want to mention is that I grew up in Fullerton, California. Fullerton was a rural town, less than 10,000 people. It's now a thriving metropolis, 140,000 people. Orange County, which is the county, has gone from a small cow county to a major metropolis. And so I experienced this change from rural to metropolitan modern life, and that's part of what influenced my thinking about the changes and how society and people adapt to change. The book is all about adaptation to change. That's a big theme of the book.
Yeah, and you talk about that in the beginning. If people look up, you're about the author segment, you talk about the things that you went through. And I love that you just laid that out for us, because you even go deeper. You talk about how it exploded and how you used to have orange groves, but they're completely gone now. Now you have the offices, the complexes, and the shopping malls and all those things.
Sure. I mean, when I was born in Orange County, there probably wasn't a building any higher than 6 stories. That would have been in the county seat, Santa Ana. Now there are hundreds of big buildings and big office complexes. It's really amazing. It's really amazing to see what has happened in the community. And oftentimes I run into people that I went to high school with back in the 60s, and son of a gun. I fill them in on what's going on in Orange County. They've heard a little bit about it, but they're quite interested. And it's very interesting to me how this change has really affected everything. We've gone from a small cow county, mostly Republican, to a mixed county, Republican and Democrat, a real melting pot, to say the very least. So Council Ford is not anything like that, because it starts small at the beginning of the book, and it's only beginning to grow by the time the book's conclusion.
Yeah, what was it like? You mentioned your first book, The American Gun Controversy: Second Amendment Friendly Solutions to Save Lives, which was done back in 2017, to now this novel. What was it like for you as a writer making that transition? Because you did such a great job on the book. I feel like you've been writing for a long time.
Well, after I wrote the first book, The American Gun Controversy, I waited and waited and waited for courts to clarify a number of extremely vital remaining questions. And it looks to me like the courts just don't seem to want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, which means that we're not moving forward at all from the original 2008 DC versus Heller case, which was the fire that the fire that burned underneath me when I was writing The American Gun Controversy. It was not going to move forward. And I thought, well, the heck with this. I've got some time here. I'm getting away from the practice of law. Let's write a fiction book. And the ideas of the whole saga of Council Ford and its development, it's a small part of a much larger book that I started writing a long time ago, which spans like 400 years. And this could be one of the final books in that saga. I wanted to devote myself to writing a book that had a good new venue that I created completely in my mind, slightly in the future, because I kind of like science fiction, but with a lot of characters that people could identify with. And I tried to, characterize them as if they are real people, which they are in my mind.
Right. I love that. Yeah. So you're not done with this. We're going to get other books from you in the future.
That's correct. The immediate follow-on book is in manuscript form. It's about half done. The plot is largely traced out, but it's more of a personal book. It's about one individual, Sam Buford, who is a character in Council Ford Insurrection, and you'll find him at the very beginning of the book and at the very end of the book, an important character. He doesn't appear to be so when you look at Council Ford Insurrection, but when you start reading the second book, you get the idea, and it's all about how he changed over the years, and recovered from a tremendous tragedy that he'd originally experienced, and became a completely different person. I really enjoyed that. And by the way, in both of these books, I have a psychologist who's a good friend of mine. I've known her for 50 years, since I was in high school, and she's consulted with me about the psychological ramifications and developments of all my characters. Flem Jackson, as you know, has a nervous breakdown at the end of this, and I wanted to make sure that the way I laid the background for that nervous breakdown, that it was realistic, it was plausible. And she thought it was eerily plausible. How about that?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. So when people read Council Ford Insurrection, the Second Amendment, 2043 to 2063, what do you hope the takeaway is, Tom?
What I hope the takeaway is, well, I want them to think about what we might do change gun laws, which will save us some lives. That's what I dedicated my first book toward. And I want to make it, as I said in the dedication to Council Ford, I want to make it so that by 2063, the Second Amendment will no longer be a hot button issue. It's on the tip of everybody's tongue. Public shootings that garner so many headlines will decrease. Everything will improve. And I just suggest, I don't outline the exact measures that I propose. I suggest them all the way along, just to get the reader to think about this. I'm not particularly advocating a position. I'm just laying out something that I depict as having happened as far as gun control, to get people to think about it. Ask all the right questions, because as we've discussed, good questions are you can't get good answers unless you have good questions. Everything starts with good questions.
So true. Perfect place to end this. J. Thomas Bowne, JD, that's where you'll find his name and the book, Council Ford Insurrection, the Second Amendment, 2043-2063. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble for a song. Go and get it. It is a fascinating read, and the characters are wonderful. Thank you, Tom, for coming on.
Sure, Kate. Nice talking to you.